use the chat feature we have in the past. So if you do have something that you, if you want to put your hand up or you have anything that you want to say, I'll be monitoring the chat. And just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be available tomorrow for anyone that wants to view our meeting. So if you will, I'll officially call the meeting to order. It's 7:01. And if you'll join me in a sign of our faith, I'll go through our opening prayer. So in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. We come together in hope from different community groups, answering the same call to service, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in gratitude for the trust placed in us, for the opportunity to serve, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in respect, aware of our diversity, willing to work for the good, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in awe of the wonder and beauty of each of God's children, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in God's name, and as we work together toward the same goal, each piece of the puzzle begins to fit neatly into place, creating a breathtaking picture of love, compassion, courage, and grace. Okay, so I'm going to move to the approval. Sorry, let's make sure my chat is working here. Bear with me, guys. I've got about 18 screens open. Okay, so approval of the agenda. Did everybody have a chance to take a look at the agenda? Was there any questions, any additions, deletions, any comments? No? Okay, could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I can make the motion, Brenda. It's Nancy.
Okay, is that you, Nancy?
It is.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so moved by Nancy. Do I have a seconder?
Rick seconds.
Okay, thanks so much, Rick. Seconded by Rick. Okay, can someone just do me a favor and just type in the chat? I just want to make sure it's working, because it says that the meeting chat is muted on my end.
Hey Brenda, it's Rhonda here. I don't have chat feature here, and that's kind of strange for Teams.
Yeah, so, and I'm looking at my meeting chat and it says the meeting chat is muted. So let me just see if I can go into the setting. Oh, here, unmute. Well, I just unmuted it, but I don't know if it works. We really need to have that. So just bear with me to see if
that worked, Brenda. That worked.
It's working now?
Yeah.
Okay, so. Okay,
yeah, that worked.
So let me go back into the conversation and make sure. So can someone type something, because I'm not seeing anything.
Hi, Brenda. Doing it now.
So I'm not seeing anything in the chat.
Don't see it?
No.
Okay. I see it.
Okay, so that's probably going to be an issue if I'm trying to take, if I'm trying to, Andrea, could I put you on the spot to monitor the chat, or is that too much?
No, I can for sure, Brenda. Is it just your chat? Is anyone else's?
It just says my meeting chat. Oh, sorry, let me admit Dan here. It just says that it says, hold on, sorry, I'm admitting all these people into the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so my meeting chat just says, so let me just test.
Okay, so that came through.
Okay, but I can't see anyone sending anything to me. So that might be, so you know what I'll do? Hold on, I'm gonna put it on my phone because I can see it coming through on my phone. So I can monitor, thanks Helen, I just saw yours come through. I'll monitor the chat on my phone. So I can see Dan's, I can see Nancy's, I can see Jessica's. Okay, so I will look at my phone to monitor. So just bear with me if I'm not really quick on the cue, because I'm gonna go back and forth. So, so welcome to everybody who has just joined the meeting. We just went through the opening prayer and the approval of the agenda, and we are going to start our presentations. We have a return to school special education services presentation tonight from our spec ed staff. And Sorry, before I do that, I should just welcome Stephanie. Sorry, Stephanie, I should have done that. So Stephanie, welcome. I don't know if you guys did that last meeting, but just a formal welcome to our SEAC meeting and welcome to the team. And we're glad to have you. And we look forward to working with you.
Thanks, Brenda. I'm really looking forward to working with the team, and we're already off to a better start this week because we're all here and we got past the first 6 minutes. So I certainly look forward to working with everyone in SEAC.
Okay, great. And we'll be looking forward to your first SEAC superintendent's update later. So,
Okay.
So we have, like I said, a return to school special education presentation tonight. I know we've been back in school for the last few weeks. I'm sure there's going to be a number of questions. So this evening we have Stephanie Ballo, Oliver Foisey, Patricia Codner, Glenda Brown, Jody O'Reilly, and Denise Colley, who will be presenting to us. We will allow them, let's try to allow them to go through the presentation if possible. And then we can go ahead and have staff answer any of the questions that we might have.
Sounds good. There we go. So I'll start the presentation this evening. And I'd like to start with our guiding principles. Our guiding principles continue to be at the core of the supports that we put in place, and we're confident that although it may look differently, the scope of our work and our commitment to supporting our students and families continues. It's been a very collective approach, and I'd certainly like to thank all of the leadership team and Andrea for their supports and efforts in problem solving each new scenario that has presented itself with each passing the day that we've experienced since school has started. Our guiding principles continue to prioritize the health, safety, and well-being of our students, staff, and families. We focus on developing and promoting enhanced mental health supports and resources for students, staff, and families. We continue to focus on providing a quality Catholic education that is flexible and engaging, creating and maintaining a sense of community and welcoming spaces in our schools and in our virtual classrooms, and ensuring that students and staff have the supports needed to create teaching and learning environments that are accessible to all. In addition to our guiding principles, the overarching goal has been and continues to be the safe reopening of schools, with a focus on the direction and guidance that's been provided from the Ministry of Education and Public Health over the last few months. Protocols and guidance with respect to COVID-19 prevention and response speaks really to the importance of a collective approach and our collective roles that everyone plays in providing a safe and healthy school environment for students, staff, and in safeguarding the broader communities in which we live, and the number of third-party providers, people that we bring in from our communities to support our schools. Health and safety training was completed by all staff on the September PA Day, and it continues as required at each site. I'm going to call on our psych services team. Oliver is here to speak to the next few slides.
Good evening. I'm going to speak to the two groups that I'm mainly involved with. The first group is the behavior analysts, who provide support for our children with autism, but also other students with needs in the area of applied behavior analysis. And we have here a little picture of the 5 staff members that we have. And our experienced behavior analysts have been with us for a while now. We have a great team. And we have here laid out on this slide the kind of different different strands or domains of how we structure our support. We continue to have transition support for students coming into the board and from other programs and from treatment. And we have focus support, which is a fairly new process that we onboarded last year, that is an additional support piece for schools when there is difficulties that require a little bit of more intense support, clarifying goals and supporting with strategies for individual students. Then we have our now established transdisciplinary rounds process that is our way of problem solving when we have when schools are stuck. That is a process that involves multidisciplinary approach with other team members and the I team, the itinerant staff as well. That's something that hasn't taken place this year because what we do is we first apply other strategies, and then when there is difficulties, we go to that tool. This process also involves the parents in problem solving. Here's 3 students as well. That's students, specific students that require more specific programming from an ABA lens. So we do that too. And we're going to speak to that in the next slide. And then we have the virtual walk-ins and telesupport. That's our way of providing PD on demand for teachers and other staff. And then ABA for All, that's our educational a strand where we provide instruction and education to all staff members as they need. And this is something that we have to kind of develop still this year because, you know, based on the current conditions, we have to reinvent that. Then the last thing is third-party meetings, and that's something we have had in place when other professionals come in to do observations on students, maybe because they're providing support in the private realm. We have our BAs that help to the translation of that into our school environment. Next slide. So we have already started supporting more than 20 students directly by BAs on the sites across the family of schools to support the successful transition back to school. We have 3 students who require ongoing and intensive support in school, where we continuing the work from last year. It has been very successful. And since the start of the school year, we already had 4 third-party meetings with community professionals. And the project that we're working on right now is how we can support the classes that provide support for virtual learners and formalizing that process. We learned a lot during the summer school where our BAs already supported several classes in applying ABA strategies, including visual strategies and other ABA strategies. Next slide. Again, I spoke a bit about the ABA walk-ins and telesupport. This is a program that we put in place, which is kind of like our on-call help for general topics. This is no-name support. In this support domain, what we do is we provide help for teachers and other school staff in general questions, but also data collection, graphing data, behavior management strategies, proactive strategies like prompting, reinforcement, training supports, and troubleshooting strategies that may already be in place but may require adjustments. this is a good investment in supporting staff, in building their capacity, so we don't even have to get to these other kind of higher level interventions. Now I'm going to speak a little bit about psychology supports. So we continue to review external and medical and psychological reports. As I previously mentioned in previous presentations, we're getting about 900 reports per year throughout the school board, and we help schools in terms of interpreting those as it relates to our identification criteria and IEP development. We have also assumed our psychological assessments with a pandemic protocol. We have made significant investment into PPEs so that we can undertake these assessments with our students in a safe and healthy and at the same time valid and reliable manner. This is not easy because obviously a lot of our standardized testing measures, as you see depicted in this slide, they are not standardized to be carried out with masks and plexiglass and visors and all these things, but we have undertaken measures to make sure that we can do these safely. One of the previous investments that has really paid off now, I might say, is something that other boards now have to kind of start using, is we've early on signed on to Q Interactive, which is a way of administering some of the assessment tools in an iPad format that allows for more social distancing with the students, less material and paper involved. We still have some of those measures, but we also have put most of our questionnaires that we're using in the standardized assessments in internet format, so that parents can provide that and teachers can provide that input over the internet without having to exchange a lot of paper copies of questionnaires. With our mental health leadership team, our chiefs of social work, Fisher Codner, and Chief of Mental Health Programming, Glenda Brown, we have worked on the delivery of mental health that Patricia and Glenda are going to speak to, and some of our psychology staff are able and available and have started doing it in the summer to support the needs of students with mental health needs. And then we will also participate in the interdisciplinary teams like the transdisciplinary rounds and our new mental health wellbeing multidisciplinary team. So we are able to support problem solving for students with mental health needs in these interdisciplinary formats. This is a slide from our pandemic protocol that we developed, which just speaks a little bit to our thinking in terms of what are the options for all of our students who are on our wait list to be able to participate in assessments. So when we look at the first blue box, that's the starting point of a student attends the school. So we need to make sure that schools have appropriate space. We know that because of the pandemic protocols, all of our schools are in dire need of space. Some schools are better situated than others. Some rooms that we may have traditionally used for our assessments may not be available. Some rooms may not be a good fit to do that in terms of ventilation and the ability to hold all our equipment and PPEs and allow for safe distancing, because we see students for hours at a time in a very close space. So we need to find rooms that allow us to do so. Most schools have been able to accommodate us, but we have also worked together with our chief speech language pathologist, Denise Cawley. We have worked with facilities and other departments to find board locations where if the school doesn't have available space, we can schedule assessments as well. And this also applies to students who attend virtual instruction. For those students, we have the option, if the parents do not want their student to go to their home school to do an assessment, if they're on the waiting list, to come to a board location. And we have picked 3 locations throughout the board to ensure equity, 1 in the North, 1 in Burlington, and 1 in Oakville. The last option that we still keep open, that we train for, we hope to avoid because of a lot of concerns or complications in terms of the standardization, would be assessing a student at home through tele-assessment. That is another option if we run into a problem where we can't accommodate or there's no way to do it in any other way. So we have all these options set up to make sure that we can start working through our wait list, and we have started doing those assessments. I think that's it.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. I just want to let you know that I will be turning off my camera as I am having issues with my Cogeco internet. So I just wanted to let you know. So we know that these are unusual and uncertain times in schools, and we have endeavored to be as prepared as we can to help our students to feel safe and cared for, and we have done so at the start of this very unique and challenging start of the school year. As you know, HCDSB, we have a very strong commitment to enhancing and supporting and protecting student mental health, and especially so in this year's return to school in all models of the academic delivery. This is the foundation for which our students, this is our foundation for student success during this challenging time. We know that students can only feel ready to engage and learn when they feel mentally well and are warmly welcomed back to class, and we've really focused on that this year. We also know that students really do need to feel safe and confident, included and cared for, whether they're attending school in person or remotely now and in the coming months. It's important to share that during the PA days in the first few weeks of September, we delivered training focused on a mentally healthy return to school, and our whole board received resources and tips to support this return to school. Also, so that staff themselves felt supported and well equipped to support students and families in these curious times. Training will continue throughout the school year and will be adapted to meet the needs of where we are at that time, and depending on the model of learning that teachers and students are in. Tier 1 is and continues to be the foundational everyday work that we do to welcome and include our students and to understand them, to build knowledge of mental health and to promote mentally healthy habits, the resiliency that's required to manage stress and distress, and to partner with parents and students and other staff to ensure and create a supportive learning school environment. Most of the mental health work in schools has been at this level just at the beginning of this school year, although we continue to support the students who require a more intensive level of support in all tiers. Patricia will be sharing the flow chart of our service delivery model in a little bit. This year, we begin the development of our new 3-year mental health and addiction strategy, and we recognize that will also require us to continue to adapt, pivot, and support student mental health in creative and responsive ways, very much like we've done so since COVID began. Our focus this year will be on year 1, this year in particular. School Mental Health Ontario continues to guide and support all the school boards in Ontario by creating and sharing a plethora of evidence-based resources and strategies. And they also continue to support the development and the implementation of our strategy. These resources, and there will be a link on the next slide, but these resources are for students and parents, staff, mental health workers, and also system leaders. We also continue through School Mental Health Ontario, continue to train our mental health workers on a variety of modalities to support our Tier 2 and Tier 3 students, things like cognitive behavioral therapy, brisk intervention, DBT, etc. There are so many resources, so I don't want to overwhelm you, but I will share just a few strategies that we've used that have supported this mentally healthy return to school. Something as simple as the ABCs of creating this mentally healthy return to school. Acknowledging, really we are finding our way and navigating these challenging times together. And, validating these feelings during these different times is critical and important. Not only are we navigating a pandemic, but we're also responding to and supporting the anti-Black racism and the impact that this has had on students, families, and staff. We also know that explicitly acknowledging the challenges of our times, giving people space, students space for reflection, time to process, this can go a long way to support people moving forward. This is true for students and the staff that we serve and families, and also for you too. The B is bridging. We know that relationships are the bridge and the most important aspect across all of the different learning environments, whether it's remote learning, traditional classroom, or the hybrid experiences. We also know that relationships are literally at the heart of what will allow us to move forward through these difficult days. This is what we do best as caring school staff in schools. And when we lead with caring, kindness, empathy, and compassion, students feel more ready to engage and learn. And the last one, C, connecting. Some students will connect easily. Others will need more active support and reconnection to feel safe and included and engaged with the school. We know that connecting with students, reconnecting with them was critical and has been essential in the first month of school. But also as things evolve over the course of the school year, there will be some students who are steady at one time and then may need support at another time. Being attentive to the needs and offering that caring support that is in with each of the staff members' roles and the training have been ways to help with a mentally healthy return to school. Connection and feeling connected. We know that a sense of belonging is a protective factor for our students and our teachers. And when teachers or other staff notice a change in someone's baseline behavior or their demeanor and are attentive to that, the teachers are encouraged to reach out, have a conversation with the student in all models of academic delivery. The staff are also encouraged to reach out to parents or consult with admin or support staff to share concerns and determine if more intensive support is required for students or families. This year, we will also be focusing on developing staff awareness, knowledge, and building capacity to support our Black, Indigenous, and our racialized students, along with our LGBTQ2S student population. Anti-Black racism and anti-Indigenous training will be embedded and woven throughout all aspects of our mental health and addiction strategy and action plan this year. All voices are valued and important, and our youth voice will continue to be a focus this year. Last year, they expressed that they really wanted to have input and share their own insights and perspective on a variety of issues, and we will be finding ways to ensure that we continue with that. They are the people that we are responding to and meeting their needs. So really, a mentally healthy return to school has been defined by creating safe, caring, inclusive, and accepting learning environments for all students, where they do feel that strong sense of belonging, and by celebrating all of our differences. And so that's been our focus, especially for the first 5 weeks of school or so. I'm going to turn it over to Patricia to speak to you regarding our support services referral into the service delivery model, and also share how social workers and CYCs are continuing to support students and families this year.
Thank you, Glenda. And Andrea, is it possible to make it a little bit larger? I know it's hard for me to see, and I even have glasses on. I can speak to it, but I just want to make sure everybody can follow along in terms of if they have questions. So good evening, everyone, and what a difference to last week. So good to celebrate when things actually work, and glad to be here with you this evening. And as just a segue after what Glenda just shared with you about all things are rooted in relationships, and I think that is one of our strengths at Hope and Catholic, which allow us to create changes so quickly and be able to implement amongst the schools to continue to deliver the quality services that we did in the other format. And so the flow chart is really to show you what we've redesigned all our services in terms of the processes for the paperwork. Even the delivery of telepractice care is now virtual. But however, I'll just go with the flow chart. It's hard for me still to see it, but I don't know, Andrea, is it possible to make it bigger or no?
That's as big as it's
Okay, that's fine.
on my screen, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So as most of you are aware already, with regards to social work / mental health workers, and I'm going to be speaking about it from two prongs. So this is also the same process with CYC in terms of how to access services within the system. So we know that teachers tend to be much more aware of when a youngster's or a student's baseline changes and they see something that is worrisome to them, they will start the conversation with the student and or the parents or both. And if that concern is elevated to the administrator through their in-school team meetings where they discuss what they're seeing, then if it still continues that the scenario that is brought to the team is exploring that this child may need to have some support, the administrator and or designate would reach out to the family as well as have consult with the on-site staff. In this virtual world, this happens via telephone, Teams, and in many cases as well in person. With regards to the social workers, they are working remotely for the most part. However, they do go into their high schools 1 to 2 days a week with scheduled appointments where they have to meet with students who require that face-to-face. I can tell you as of this week as well, some of the social workers have made home visits because of the parent. That is a need they have, and they have been properly with their PPEs. They meet in the backyard or the front yard, but we're doing everything we can to provide the level of service that each family and student requires. But for the most part, many of our students have been able to utilize the online virtual telepractice modality that we were able to utilize over the summer months. And so that's going well. With regards to the online process, the administrator would obtain the SE1, which is now electronic. And once it's off on that, that is then initiates the referral to the social worker and or CYC. I should let you know too that if the family is not able to sign off on the SE1 electronically, the other options are still available. The principal or designate can mail the SE1, with an enclosed self-addressed envelope with a stamp for the family to return it, and or if the student is in elementary or in attend the adaptive model where they're in the school during the morning, that can also be sent home that way. So all options are explored and looked at in terms of making sure we meet the needs of the family and whatever will result in the quickest way to get the SE1 back. Of course, when the administrator consults with the staff, there are times when the concerns are such that it does not necessarily require support from school staff, but that the family would be assisted or supported with looking at external agencies. For example, if there is a situation where there is a major family conflict and the family is not wanting the school to be aware of it by signing the SE1, but we can see that it's impacting the child, we would recommend to the family to utilize ROC, for example, our leading mental health agency, and we would support that process if need be. But for the most part, many of our families do accept and are appreciative of the services that we can provide. And so once the SE1 is obtained and the referral is made, then it creates an automatic file for every CYC or social worker. And the managers would be notified that those files are created. We would provide consultation for ongoing assessments and so forth. So really quite pleased with how quickly we were able to work in a collaborative model with our IT, research, chiefs of services, and with our special education secretaries. They are the behind-the-scenes champions in getting all our forms retooled so that it can operate online. And so far, so good, and quite excited about this because it also affords us another opportunity to be working briskly with our families who are in need of supports. And I think, Glenda, I don't know if you wanted to add anything about the CYCs.
Yes, I would. Thank you, Patricia. CYCs this year continue to be school-based, and they are currently in their schools on a daily basis. They are providing face-to-face individual support, of course, following the health and safety protocols. They're providing face-to-face individual support virtually to those students who are learning from home remotely. They're also delivering Tier 1 programs, and they've been adapted for live streaming delivery, being invited into classrooms that way, or delivering some of the programming outdoors as weather has permitted. CYC's, their scope of practice continues to be really on focusing on supporting the social, emotional, and mental health of students. One of the things I wanted to mention is that they're continuing to do things like developing resources to support teachers. Sometimes we can mitigate there being a referral to a CYC or other supports by providing support to the teachers. So they are strongly supporting teachers by developing resources that teachers can use. Like I said, they've adapted a lot of the Tier 1 programs to be streamed into classrooms, and programs like Zones of Regulation, Kids Have Stress Too, Healthy Relationships. We are also moving forward with some of our other Tier 1 supports that really do support that social emotional literacy that is so needed right now. Programs like Roots of Empathy and Mind Up. They may look a little bit differently, and again, it's according to teacher capacity and whether or not they want those programs. But there have been many resources that CYCs have developed and continue to do things like lunch and learns virtually from their office, and continue to develop PD. They have been very, very creative and responsive to really meeting students and teachers in schools where they're at. Really focusing on that student engagement this year. So thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Hi. Thanks, Andrea. So yes, we provided PD sessions to our department heads and CERTs prior to the start of school and actually during the first week of school as well, to review special education considerations related to the return to school post-COVID. The Friday before school started, we had the department heads and ICERTs attend, and then on the first day of school, where there was PD around COVID-related safety protocols, we also met with our CERTs to answer any questions they might have around the considerations related to the return to school and special education needs. We also provided a PD session. Karen McCarthy, one of our consultants, and two of our iCerts, James McGinnis and Andrea Mendoza, presented to all the virtual teachers and CERTs as well. We invited the CERTs as well to learn a little bit more about what special education looks like in a virtual setting. There was actually 233 in attendance, so we almost maxed out that session, but we were able to record it, and it's been posted into the virtual teachers D2L. So as new teachers come in or they need to refresh and learn a little bit more, then they are able to view that again. And we're going to also offer opportunity to have some office sessions with virtual iCert that we have supporting our virtual school as well. And as you know, school-based rehab services is new with Erin Oak. It's not new, but changed, I guess, with Erin Oak. So they had an opportunity as well to present to all our CERTs, department heads and iCerts, to review what that looks like this year. So we were able to do that in the first month as well. So some of the resources that we've had an opportunity to develop was based on information that we learned over the course of our time doing the program this summer. So we received feedback from some of the teachers that supported our online special education programming and transition support over the summer, and created using Teams to support online learning. Things like how not to mute your teacher, those sorts of things, how to teach hands up, and all of the good things that we need to know about Teams and that we've learned. So we created a document that has been shared to all our CERTs. And we also created a tip sheet for teaching special education in a virtual environment as well. And that's been posted to our special education connections for all our CERTs. So for our transition support, we know that post-COVID, many of our students that may not have required a traditional transition support may need that, as it was just unknown to them at the time, and what that would look like returning to school. So we really wanted to make an intentional effort to provide information to our CERTs and how to best support our students as they transition back to school. So we created a tier transition support document and provided that to all the CERTs, looking at the tier 1 level up to the tier 3 to provide more intensive intervention, but recognizing that all our students needed that opportunity to be able to make that connection and touch base with CERTs and families to make sure that we provided the appropriate transition for them. We also created, with support from our behavior analysts, transition support materials such as social stories, hand washing. We had a neat little project from the summer where we had teachers from the summer program had asked students what some of their questions were about their concerns about the return to school. And then we had permission to video them, and we put it in a PowerPoint, which is posted on our return to school website, and they participated, and the students asked their questions and then the teacher answered their questions. So that's been posted as well on the return to school website. We continue to hold transition meetings. We know that there are multiple entry points in and out of the virtual school. So we will continue to hold transition meetings as appropriate. And as Oliver already discussed, we have activated our BA support, transition support as required. We've had a great opportunity to collaborate and discover things as we go through all the new, I think Stephanie was speaking about all the new things that come our way, and collaborate and learn from them. So our I-teams have started weekly visits, either virtual or face-to-face. We reviewed the EA allocation with the EA managers. So that was the special education consultants and EA managers for new students and virtual learners as well. We continue to hold, actually through the month of September, we held weekly ICER and consultant meetings, and from now on in, we'll do monthly or bi-monthly as required. However, the I team and consultants continue to meet weekly to discuss the concerns out there and supports that certs and students require. We've reviewed our processes, as we know that some of those things have changed based on sharing information electronically, so we continue to review those to ensure continuity of services. We had 2 town halls held for the educational assistants to answer and address any questions or concerns around the return to school. We have ongoing site-specific meetings to address those concerns as well, to ensure that if EAs have any questions about correct PPE usage or any concerns that they have related to COVID or just students, that we have the opportunity to address those site-specific. And we continue to have our I teams support our educational assistants in schools as well. So as you know, we've had to create processes around our remote learning and how certs will support our students. So we created 3 virtual specialized classes for our gifted and STC students who opted for remote learning. They're supported by a set, and in the STC, we also provided virtual EA support as well, so that's up and going. To maintain the continuity for students, certs at the homeschool will also be the cert for any remote learner. So they kept their caseload, and when students need to transition in and out of the virtual school, they have that continuity and consistency with the homeschool cert supporting them. That is the same for our EAs. So the homeschool EA will support both in-person and remote learners, and how that's managed is at the school level, and they will support both of those, any student that's either in-person or remote. And IEPs will continue to be created, in collaboration with virtual teachers and homeschool cert. And so that process is still the same. And administrators from the homeschool will sign the IEPs and conduct virtual IPRCs for remote learners as well. We really wanted to keep that connection with the home school, knowing that students can opt in and out of virtual learning at any time, and to support that continuity, we really felt that we wanted to create a process whereby the cert, the homeschool cert, and the administration would be intimately involved with what's happening with that student. And finally, we did have, we continue to have SEAC submissions and provide specialized equipment and AT equipment for students learning at school and at home. And we also continue to provide technology training to students at school and learning at home. So that process is continuing regardless of where the student is learning. And we're also looking at being able to provide our virtual teachers with some read and write training. Over the course of time, we will provide that opportunity for them as well. So that is continuing in our schools and in our virtual school as well.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to chat with you tonight about speech and language services and deaf and hard of hearing, blind, low vision services. So our DHH team of Rhonda and Sandra have been really busy. They supported students in summer school in both July and August. And we've been working really diligently to get systems into the schools to support students for the first day of school. And actually this time, for the first time ever, all of our FM systems were processed and delivered to schools before the students were in the building. So we're very proud of that. And we certainly leveraged all of our SLPs and CDAs to be driving systems out to schools and delivering them on September 3rd. But we feel it was time well spent. Tip sheets and video links have been provided to support teachers in setting up systems, and Rhonda and Sandra have also been providing remote support via Teams and telephone to help that set up. They've been busy supporting technology for most of September for both in-school and virtual school students. We've been trialing the use of clear masks. We were fortunate to have quite a few masks for the startup of the school year, and the DHH team has been working with classroom teachers and students to determine the effectiveness and the ongoing need for masks. And we originally trialed masks with about 120 students, and I think we found that about 40 students found that they wanted them on an ongoing basis. So we're very confident at this point that we're going to be able to continue to provide those clear masks for the DHH students who are wanting them. And we're also preparing for some ongoing sound bites in place of our day-long training PD that we used to pull teachers out for, to provide training around how to support a student who is deaf and hard of hearing. We're going to be doing weekly push-outs to the system around a little bit of information, a few strategies, and then some things to try and some experiential activities. Our blind low vision team of Kristen Messina and Liam Agnew also supported students over the summer who were doing summer school and required Braille. They've been very busy at the start of the school year in preparing Braille materials for our students who are virtual learners. Most of our Braille learners have chosen to learn virtually for the beginning of the school year. And they've also been supporting teachers in adapting virtual lessons and alternative programming for some of our students who are also virtual learners. They've also been, I should say, supporting the transition too of some students who are coming into our system this year with vision needs. Our speech and language department has, they had a very busy summer. We provided summer support to virtual classrooms as well as to 35 students through individualized sessions. We did sessions for students who were using augmentative and alternative communication, students who were emerging communicators, so just learning to speak, as well as students. We ran some social communication groups in the summer for students who we had concerns about their connection during the shutdown in the spring, all of which were very well received, and we got some really good feedback and did some great learning that we can feed back to the system as well. In addition, we were able to pilot some of our classroom-based programs virtually that we wanted to launch in September. So it was really a busy summer, but a very productive one. In September, the SLPs have been focusing on reviewing some of our external speech and language reports. We typically get those in the spring. Erin Oak was a little bit delayed because of COVID and getting them to us this year. So there's about 60 students from the preschool services that were transitioning into school as well. We had thought that Erin Oak would be holding many of the JKs until Christmas, but we've gotten several of those reports as well. So we're transitioning both JKs and SKs this year. Assessments have resumed with pandemic protocols, and you can see a picture here of Jody Hyami and Robin Bryant set up to do an assessment, and we're really pleased with how quickly we were able to pull together some documents with the support of our psychology colleagues as well in working out these protocols. And I think to date we've probably done about 10 or 12 assessments by now that are in the building, and they've gone very, very well. So we're confident that we're getting results that we can interpret along with our standardization norms. Honestly, the students are amazing. They don't miss a beat. They're pretty good with all of this. It's the grown-ups that have to sort out the logistics. We've been preparing resources for mitigating some of the impact of masks on communication and language development, some look-fors for both kindergarten educators as well as parents. And we're also spending a lot of time on playgrounds observing kids in kindergarten when they don't have their masks on, to do some just sort of tier 1 informal evaluation of language skills. And we've also been prioritizing supporting the transition of students who are using augmentative and alternative communication, whether they be virtual learners or back in the building. Our communicative disorders assistants have shifted a little bit. So historically, they've done a lot of individual sessions, and because the SLPs are focused on trying to clear some of the backlog on the wait list, we wanted them focused on that. So the CDAs have been doing some tier 1 support. So they've created different virtual programs that they can do with whole classrooms around communicating in masks, narrative development, social cognition skills, phonological awareness, conversational skills for secondary students, and discourse skills as well for secondary students. And so far they've been quite well received. We have a link that's gone out. We've started with our community classrooms, and we have links that have gone out to those teachers where they can request those programs. And then our next wave will be offering them to teachers of students who have been through some of these programs. So students who may have had small group pullout or individual pullout around social cognition or narrative development. We'll offer it in those classrooms as a carryover, so the children have a chance to revisit the skills, and their peers and their teachers for this year have a chance to learn the skills as well.
Are we done?
We are done, Brenda.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't want to interject because I wasn't sure if there was another slide coming in. So thank you to everyone for your presentations. I'm confident that there's going to be some questions. Let me grab my chat. And if everybody's okay, I'd love to see if we can get some questions answered from some of our SEAC members. So the first person I see is Nancy. So do you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you. So just a question, and I'm just trying to understand. So I noticed that the comment was that the social workers are working remotely, whereas our CYCs are still in person. I'm just trying to understand how the social workers can successfully work with our kids and work with the families if they're working remotely at this point in time. And is that the ongoing conclusion, is that it will only be remotely? Or will it be, I guess, will it be looked at based on special circumstances? Obviously, if there's a real need for face-to-face, that would be accommodated or dealt with. I'm not sure if that will go to Patricia or to Stephanie.
I can start. With regards to the current practice right now, social workers are not assigned to just one school. So in keeping with our public health recommendations around social distancing and reducing adults or folks going into the school, because a social worker typically has 7 to 8 schools that they provide services to, and because they play a heavy role in our crisis response for students in the buildings, they are entering the high schools 1 to 2 days a week to have scheduled face-to-face for students who require that, as well as supporting staff and administrators and so forth. But for the most part, they are working from home so that if there's a crisis in one of their schools, they're able to respond and deal with the crisis. If they're based in their school Monday to Friday and there's a crisis in their feeder school, it compromises that somewhat. It's not that it's impossible, but it's that they are able to do their work virtually for the most part with many of the students they are working with. And if Stephanie wants to add some more with that, please free to do so.
Sorry, so just to clarify then, Patricia, because I didn't get it out of the presentation then. So if they're working from home and a crisis does come up, does that mean then they will go into the school? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Yes,
Okay,
if that's required.
I didn't understand that through the presentation.
No, absolutely.
Okay, and I do understand the public health piece. Obviously, we have EAs who work in multiple schools or a couple schools. We have some teachers who work in multiple schools as well. So I do understand that piece of it. It's just I was just trying to understand if they were going in at all. That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Patricia. Dan, I have you up next. You have a question?
Yeah, hi, everybody. I have a couple of questions, but so first one is around the mental health. And I think there are some specific problems with mental health that might be related to the isolation and the remote learning. And the question is, was there anything that was, I guess, observed in terms of the specific mental health issues, and how has the methodology to address them adapted? And the other question has to do with the basically with the staff training, because I think somebody said like this crisis will advance the school system with 20 years. And I think that might be true for regular students, but for special needs, it's a bit more delicate. So I know there is, I guess the staff was making a lot of efforts with the summer school online, and with a lot of like interaction right now, even when students are in school. But my question was, how do we address the staff training, ongoing training needs, whether that is on the remote software, on the apps, on the different, I guess, sharing the experiences of different staff from CERTs, teachers, EAs, what worked, what didn't work. And I think there was a mentioning that there was a presentation from Erinoka as well. So how is this technical training towards, I guess, remote interaction is going to be addressed throughout the year? Because I think things are going to evolve pretty fast throughout the year. Thank you.
I can start, and then if anybody else wants to jump in, one of the things that I forgot to mention during my presentation was that one of the things that School Mental Health Ontario is doing this year, and it will be a focus, is on their developing material resources specifically for students with special needs and mental health needs. And so those resources are in development right now. As part of our mental health strategy, we will be very intentional around how we will be providing support and training to staff. It's a little early on in the school year to really have any feedback or data on how it's going. We do recognize that we have to be very intentional around providing resources and supports for teachers who are supporting students face-to-face, and how it looks very different in the virtual world or supporting students in a remote world because of the fact that there are things missing, like being able to lay your eyes on students in the same way, visual cues, etc. So we do have a plan. We do have our first mental health advisory and steering committee at the end of October, where we will be revising our mental health strategy and developing an implementation strategy around how to support. We recognize too, things are changing very rapidly, and that from week to week, and so we have to be very adaptive in our approach. I know that a survey, I do believe, went out in the summer. We do have to be responsive to see and also gather data from teachers to see what are their pressing issues so that we can continue to support them. Really, it is about connection and ensuring that teachers feel, we still have the tiered model of intervention. We still will be continuing to provide those supports at the tier 1 and 2 and 3 levels. And like Patricia said, we're still providing that in service to teachers, especially new CERT teachers and other teachers, to ensure that they are aware of what supports are available in their schools. But we are kind of at the beginning of October and will be very much intentional around gathering resources and information to share with teachers. We have a mental health tip of the month, where we will identify kind of an issue of the month, provide resources to students, parents, and teachers. We're also looking at a Twitter feed specifically for mental health. And we do look forward to those resources specifically for responding to the needs of students with special needs. And if anybody else, Patricia, Oliver,
yeah, I'll jump in. In addition to what you said, and Dan, thank you for the question, because it is very much the reality we're in right now, and it's definitely something that social workers reach out weekly to their administrator to talk about emerging themes they may be seeing. And so that is definitely something that week by week we're looking at, where the hotspots are, or what we need to retool or revisit in terms of the way we deliver service, and what are some of the other areas we need to sharpen our skills with. With regards to professional development, that's something that we're working on right this moment. There's about 8 teams right now in the social work group working on developing PD to support the system in the next month or so. Again, because we're in the early days, as Glenda referenced, it's just really getting things in order, establishing some sort of norm, if there can be such a thing right now, but to create a semblance of order in the school. And then once the teachers are somewhat comfortable in their role, then we're going to start to embed and deepen their insights and knowledge around the various things that they that might be encountering or seeing, and how they can reach out to the staff to consult and to make sense of it, and pivot to look at where's the next place to turn to. So it is definitely going to be an evolving situation, and we are very, very mindful that we have to be ready to deal with the possible influx, because from a provincial standpoint, the research is showing that many of our students are having issues with the pandemic, but then we also have another set of students who typically would be anxious at school are actually doing better working virtual. So it's kind of a mixed bag right now, but we are getting ourselves prepared to deal with whatever comes forward.
Jody, you and Oliver both had your hands up in response. You guys want to duke it out?
I don't know, Oliver, if you want to talk about the mental health, I was going to actually, I don't know if I'm answering the second piece of Dan's question about the technology training. Dan, I think you were asking, how we're supporting our teachers and certs to support our students learning virtually. I just want to make sure I'm answering your question.
It is so vast what is available right now and what's coming up, just because of the current conditions. What is coming up, it is new. It is stuff that not everybody is aware of, and I think everybody should be on their toes in terms of getting trained, getting the best tools, and making sure that I guess positive experiences that with something that work is shared across the board from whoever was experimenting that in the PD sessions and so on. So I think there should be a strategy in place, right, in terms of getting those this knowledge shared as much as fast as possible.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. I understand what you're saying. So we actually, in the spring during shutdown, we did provide PD sessions to our teachers around read, write in different levels, depending on where they were in their learning. And then in the start of this school year at our first FOSS, which we had just last week, I believe, we had curriculum come in and provide PD sessions around using D2L to all of our certs. And there was 2 sessions that were offered. One was a beginner session on D2L if certs weren't familiar with it, and the other session was digging a little deeper, so understanding and utilizing D2L to a greater extent. As we mentioned, we also provided the PD session to our virtual teachers, and that's going to continue to be available to them, as well as some office hours provided by our virtual iCert, so that they can look at ways that our certs can support. So the other thing we had today, actually it was just today, we had Lisa Vaca run the CLC for our life skills teachers and STC sets. And presenting at this session today was 2 of our virtual teachers from the summer. So they created a presentation and provided activities and looked at ways that they were able to engage their students through online learning during the summer programming, because they did find it very successful, and the feedback was that they created a real sense of community. So we continue to support our life skills teachers and our sets to engage our students online. We had our virtual STC teacher there as well on how to do that. And we're going to continue providing read and write training as well. It's another opportunity for our teachers to understand and make sure they know how to use read and write technology for our students. So that's for our virtual teachers. We'll be doing that. As well, the other piece is Board Maker. So that's a tool that we're using with our students. It is switching over. Boardmaker uses Flash, and that is no longer. I don't know if you've seen the messages pop up, but Flash will be no longer shortly. So Boardmakers had to pivot a bit, and they're creating a new platform where we have to download it. So we will have that available to all of our teachers as well, and provide supports for them to be able to use that. So we do keep it in the forefront that we recognize that, you know, supporting our students in this virtual way is unique and challenging, but we definitely, you know, have it on our list of making sure that we support our and teachers.
Thanks so much, Jody. We've got some other questions, and I didn't put my name in the chat, but I have a question, which I hope is okay. And I actually just want to make a comment, just a comment to follow up, I guess, on what's all been said here and some of the comments that Dan made. But the one piece I'm not hearing, and I know that this is not an intentional oversight, but I'm not hearing anywhere here about getting feedback from parents on how things have gone or how things are going. You know, I know that there was, you know, a lot of obviously probably feedback that's available from the spring. We know that it wasn't the perfect method of distance learning we'd like to have seen. But, you know, there was a lot of things that transpired during the spring that I believe that parents could give a lot of feedback on. And we also had, for the first time this year, we had our special needs, our spec ed students participating in summer school. I know we haven't had that in the past because I've asked for it year after year, and this is the first year we had it because of funding from the government. And so we had, you know, specialized programs for our spec ed students, as well as an integration for our spec ed students into some of the more conventional programs like our literacy and our numeracy and things like that. And I think it'd be extremely vital to get feedback from the parents on how that went, some of the challenges, some of the successes, and build on that. I know that I had made a suggestion, probably informally, which maybe it needed to be more formal, but an informal suggestion to do a post-mortem. And perhaps that's happened at a board level, perhaps it's happened at a staff level. I don't know because I haven't had that feedback. But I think it'd be extremely important to have some sort of post-mortem on all of this and include the parent voice in that. So that's my comments on that. Jody, I see your hand up, so I'd love to hear from you before I ask my next question.
Yeah, I wanted to just mention we did actually get parent feedback from both sessions in the summer. So I don't have it in front of me this very second to be able to speak to, but we did get feedback from our teachers and our parents, which did inform some of the practices that we put in place for the fall, because we recognized that spring was a little different. And then we went into the summer and what I think, like, I don't know if everyone is aware, but myself and Jen Thompson supported this summer over the, I know you know Brenda, so yes. I'm not sure everyone else did, but myself and Jen spent the summer in front of the screen and supported our teachers' certs and sets, the specialized programming. So we did receive feedback again from teachers and parents that did inform a lot of what we put in place in the fall.
So, you know, just to jump on that, Jody, that's always the kind of stuff that's super important for us to see. And, you know, again, I have a lot of informal conversations just because of the discussions that I have with people, but it would be really great to see some of that feedback. I think for a few different reasons is to see how it went, see the things that we can build on, but also to see the successes of, you know, how things went, because, you know, my hope always is in any of these programs is that we continue to build again on these successes, and perhaps even if we don't have funding available next year, it's something that we as a board decide to move forward with because, you know, it was really impactful. So I think it's helpful if we perhaps as SEAC, if there's a mechanism for us to sort of see what that parent feedback looked like, and even at the touch points along this process, because we know that our spec ed students are obviously, you know, a different group than our typical students. And so it is just good to hear, you know, feedback from all points. So if there's a mechanism to do that, I know I would really appreciate that, to hear from other families.
Okay, thanks, Brenda.
Yeah, thanks, Jody. I appreciate it. And so my formal question was actually to Glenda. So Glenda, I had a question for you with respect to one of the slides where you had mentioned the groups, you know, that we're sort of looking to support. So specifically, you know, you had mentioned our Indigenous students, our LGBTQ2 students, you know, our Black students, and I wanted to understand, I guess, some specific when you said that we're looking to support them, I think I was looking to see for some specifics on how we would be supporting those unique populations of students. But the group that I didn't hear about was those students with disabilities. And I wondered, I'd like to know, what specific ways we're supporting the other groups I mentioned, and then what specific ways are we supporting students with disabilities from a mental health perspective?
Mm-hmm. Good question, Brenda, and thank you for that. The ways that we will be, and again, this is part of our building our and developing our new 3-year strategy with a focus on that. Really, it will be starting at building knowledge and awareness with our staff and providing learning opportunities, but also, recognizing that we are at the awareness stages for especially the anti-Black racism and anti-Indigenous school populations. One of the things that we are looking forward to is being more intentional in our mental health strategy related to our students with special needs and our spec ed students. And looking forward to those materials and those resources specifically to supporting those populations, our students, because the needs are very unique and very different. And so we will be embedding all of those things into our strategy. And so my apologies, I think you bring up a very good point. I think that that is something for me to be cognizant of and being more intentional of mentioning. I think that's because always when we're looking at all student populations, we automatically include our students, spec ed students and students with special needs. So I appreciate you bringing that to my attention to be more intentional around using that language. But we will be starting and being very explicit around building capacity and knowledge based on, we recognize it in the spring, along with COVID, there were a lot of the anti-Black racism, there were the protests. We recognize that a lot of students and staff and families were triggered by that, and recognize that we need to do a little bit better by being more intentional around building knowledge and awareness in terms of responding to the needs of those specific populations. So really it will be starting at embedding those things into our strategy, but just, ensuring that they are woven throughout all aspects of the work that we are doing, and being intentional about that.
Great.
Does that answer your question, Brenda?
It does. I mean, I think I'd like, and I see Oliver has his hand up as well. So bear with me one second, Oliver. Yes, it does, Glenda. And I know that these are never intentional omissions. I do know that. I'm very cognizant of that. I think, obviously I'm super sensitive to it because, it's a spec ed conversation. And, I know that, we have a number of students who struggle with distance learning, and some do great, some struggle. We know that there is mental health challenges that come with that distance piece. I think I'm always super sensitive to our population of students with disabilities, because it may not be as easy for them to engage. They're already somewhat of a disadvantage socially in some of these situations we have at school, or being able to fully participate, interact, and so I'm just cognizant of that. So what I would say is, as you develop those, Glenda, we would love to hear those as those strategies become more apparent at the table, as you're looking at reviewing those and implementing those. I don't think I speak just for myself when I say I think we'd love to see those.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think it's very important to have your critical lens. All of SEACs, the ability and the opportunity as well to share insights and be able to participate and have input in that from your own expertise and experience as well. Absolutely, and I think for me it's implicit, but I think thank you for bringing it to my attention. I need to be more explicit in mentioning that. So I appreciate that. Right, there's learning for all of us. So. Absolutely, every step of the way, I will bring it back to the SEAC table for you to have that opportunity.
That'd be awesome. Thank you. And Oliver, did you still want to comment?
Yes, I just wanted to make a quick remark that in terms of supports for students with dual diagnosis, and by dual diagnosis, I mean here students with developmental disabilities and mental health. disorders or tier 3 mental health problems. I sit on a committee with Halton Region and other local agencies and both school boards that is working towards securing funds for a long-term strategy to develop a framework for resources in the Halton region. And if that's of interest, I could at another time maybe report in more detail from that committee.
I think that'd be great, Oliver. I think we'd appreciate that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. So I've got the next question. Nancy, you were back in the queue.
Sure, and it'll be quick because I know there's other people who haven't asked a question yet who want to ask. So just in keeping with what we have on the website in regards to supporting our students with special needs, and talking about if it's not possible to meet needs through the synchronous learning piece, that there's exemptions and that there's different solutions that can be met. How is the communication? Like, how are we involving other staff in regards to like the principals and the teachers, so that I know that there's a lot of talk with the certs and the consultants and the communication and how that's discussed, but how do we bring everybody into it so that we understand that there isn't necessarily a one size fits all solution? It's not necessarily in school with supports and accommodations, or when they go into that virtual piece, what does it look like, and the ability to be creative and meeting the students' needs based on what works best for them, because we know that it is challenging to be online for 5 hours synchronously a day, especially when we've got students who need some accommodations or modifications. How do we bring everybody in so that we're all on the same page?
Sorry, Jody, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't.
I'm slow on the trigger tonight. Sorry.
Okay. Thanks, Nancy, for that question. So there has been communication and consistent communication to our consultants and ICERTs and CERTs about that ongoing conversation, that we know that, every child is unique and the situation is unique. So we do have, an overall arching framework for supporting our students in the transition to and from, and changes that need to be made and considerations that need to be made. But we have said that there are different situations that will arise, and they have come up. And we've been able to work with the administrators, and it has been a bit of a balancing act for sure. There's, the virtual principal and there's the homeschool principal. We have the consultant to the homeschool. So the consultant and ICERT also support with the homeschool, support that child virtually as well, or in schools. So they are consistent, but we do have a consultant and ICERT supporting the virtual learning too. So it's bringing everyone together and keeping that ongoing communication from myself and Stephanie to our consultants and ICERTs and CERTs to say, every situation we have to look at and collaborate with the family to look at the needs of the child and what is going to work for them. So I know that there has been a few bumps along the way, but we continue to work out those processes and continue to message that to our system, that every child is unique and we have to look at these. While we have, again, those overall arching, framework for support, we do have to make sure that we're working in collaboration with the family, because we do recognize, and actually that was one of the feedback from the summer program, the 2 hours online was a lot. So when we saw the PPM come out about 225 minutes for our students, it was a concern. It really was, thinking about how are we going to meet the needs of these students. When we found in the summer, both parents and teachers sort of reported that it was a long time to be online. So we're looking at being creative, providing those asynchronous activities, and doing the same things we would do with these kids in school. If a child couldn't attend, we have situations like that where they're not able to be in school a full day. So we work out a transition plan to build that child up to be able to join us all day. And we would do the same thing virtually as well. So if the child can't attend virtually, 225 minutes. We're going to work with the family. What is going to work for you? How can we build that up? And it's going to be working to support them in the best way they can. So if they have the, you know, if they have the ability, but they're just not there yet, we're going to work with them to get there. And so that's, again, those ongoing conversations and collaboration, and supporting those students where they're at.
Thanks, Jody. Did you have a follow-up, Nancy?
To me, it's just that it's the communication piece. I know that with the certs and the iCerts and the consultants, I know that there's that constant communication and they understand that piece. It's the rest of the school community understanding that there's that piece, is that it's not a simple, it's in school or synchronous and that's it. Those are the only choices. Just that we have to look at it from a very different lens, and that we have to be open to that, and just that we're all buying into the same, not buying in, but we're all understanding that that's a very critical and important piece to this section of our students' needs.
Absolutely. And we will continue, Nancy, if that's been a gap in making sure that communication gets out to our wider system. We certainly will continue to have those conversations with our administrators to ensure that they understand that as well. And that will be worked through the consultants and Stephanie with the administrators meetings. So thanks for that. Yeah.
Thanks, Jody. Thanks, Nancy. Marika, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for that presentation. It was very comprehensive and informative. I have a couple questions, and my dog's just walked into the room just while I said that. I think one of the things that I'm hearing sort of from the students who are in school, there is a lot of anxiety for those who are going for COVID tests right now, and that lengthy wait. They're out of school for about a week, 10 days. It feels like it's getting even longer. And I know that teachers are checking in and you know, just talking about that mental health component. Is there any materials or programming, social stories or videos or anything like that that we can provide for the teachers to give to the families? I know that we went through it. It was a very stressful time, just trying to communicate that to my kids. I know there's a lot of families who are experiencing that right now, and I just wanted to know what supports we have in place for them.
Jody, you want to go ahead and answer that one?
Yeah. Thanks. That's actually great. Thank you for raising that. I think that's something that we're going to have to develop unless somebody else out on my team has it. I know that our BAs did some amazing work with creating really great resources online. And, you know, I'm not sure that that is something that actually we thought of doing, but I can appreciate why we need it. So if you'll leave that with me, I'd like to, tackle that a little bit and see if we can get our BAs to create something, or our iCerts. We have a team of great people out there that can support that and create social stories around that, because that's a really good point. So unless somebody else has something that's out there that I'm unaware of, I think that is probably something that we do need to develop, and we can post on the Return to School website.
Thanks, Jody. Did you have a follow-up? Sorry.
No, that's great. I just wondered, I know, again, I said the teachers are checking in, but I just wanted to know what we can perhaps, provide them with so they can give to the families, because there's a lot of stressed out families waiting for those COVID results. Yeah, I did just have a question about the psych assessment, if that's okay. I'm just curious how many, well, not an exact number, how many tele-assessments have we done throughout this this period? Because I know that you're saying it's not an optimal way of doing an assessment. And to piggyback on that, are those assessments, are those students going to be flagged to be reassessed down the line if you're feeling that that's not enough of providing the assessments?
Thank you for the question. We haven't done any virtual assessments yet, because we're able to restart with the in-person assessments. That is an option for us if we have to do it. And you're absolutely right. If we were doing online assessments, we would probably follow up with another assessment at a later point to validate those results. I mean, the students that we're seeing right now are students that were on the wait list before COVID lockdown occurred. So we know that those students are students that have academic and other difficulties that existed. Obviously, any of those students that we're getting now, the referrals that are coming in, any assessment will be more complex because we now have to consider the effect of the lockdown on instruction, the effect of the lockdown and the pandemic on mental health. And so all the assessments that we're doing with students now, to a certain degree, will have a wider range of uncertainty in terms of interpreting our data. So that's why we prefer to do the in-person assessment, where the psychometric parameters are a little bit easier to control. We haven't needed to do online assessments, but let's say we're in a situation where we go back into lockdown, that's probably the modality that we have to go to, and we will.
Great, Marika, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay, no problem. Maria, I've got you next up in the queue.
Hi there. So I had a few questions before the meeting, and Jody mostly answered them, but I just wanted to clarify a couple of things, and then a couple of at least one other question that's come up since. So if you need me to go in the queue, back in the queue because I have too many questions, that's fine. But I'll just start with the transition supports. You mentioned that you're continuing to hold transition meetings as appropriate, and I'm just wondering if all initial transition meetings, like the transition back to school, have those all taken place? Because I heard not long ago from parents that hadn't had that, and so if that's the case, you know, what should they do? So that's the first one.
Hi. Do you want me to go ahead and answer that?
Sure, it might be easier.
Sorry, Brenda, is that okay?
No, Jody, no, go, you're good.
Okay, Maria. As far as I'm aware, Maria, as I mentioned, the communication to our certs, we're mindful that the transition this year would be different. So we created a document that looked at the tiered support, transition support, and things that we could do at level 1. So they were asked, all sorts were asked to touch base through either a phone call or an email to their families about the transition. And then it went up to students that would require an actual transition visit, be it virtual or in person. So I wasn't made aware, to be honest, of anyone that didn't get a transition. We communicated very clearly with our certs that the expectation is that we would be providing transition visits virtually, and then where appropriate and if necessary, we would provide them in school as well. So I'm not aware of anyone in particular that didn't get any. I would suggest that that family reach back out to the school. I'm not sure where they're at in their transition. If they I don't know if you mentioned if they could still have it, but if they're in school, so I'm not really sure of the particulars of that case. But if there's any concerns about the transition, and coming back together with their teacher and the cert and making sure that they collaborate with any questions or concerns they have with regards to that. So
okay, yeah, that's fair enough. I'll that's what I'll do. And then in terms of the remote special education classes, I think you mentioned there was 3 virtual classes, gifted and the structured teaching. So is that 3 in total then?
That's right. There's 2.
Yeah, not 3 of each.
Yeah, 3 in total. So 2 gifted, 1 5-6, 1 7-8, and 1 STC.
Okay, and I'm just curious, do we know like how many spec ed students chose remote learning versus in person, and how that compares to the general population? Is that something we have numbers on? Or?
Okay, so I can answer part of that question, I think.
Okay.
I do know that there was about, so I have to preface this to say that the number I'm about to give you was probably based on the beginning of school. In fact, it was based on the beginning of school. I was going to say 3 or 4 weeks ago. So it was about 472 kids that chose virtual learning that were special education. That being said, I don't know the percentage. I'm not certain at this point in time what the total percentage of like the number of special education kids we have, which I could probably find out, but I don't have that on me to find out the percentage. So, but there was about 472 kids, and now I'm not sure where that is at right now. It's a bit of a moving target, to be honest. That information was collected so we could sort of look at how we were going to support as we were creating the framework. So I'm not sure where that is exactly right now, but it was 472. I see Stephanie has her hand up. Maybe she has more information than I.
And I guess the other question that's part of that would be how many of those are in the spec ed classes. So I'll let
I
Stephanie
can answer
go ahead.
If you want, and then I can pass it to Stephanie. So
Sure.
There's in the I think there is oh, actually I can I'm just thinking there. I don't want to give you the wrong number. There's 8 in the STC, which is about what we would have in a typical in-class STC. There's about 22 in the 7-8 and a little bit less in the 5-6, but I don't have that exact number right now.
Wow, those are almost in-person classes, yeah.
Yeah, so it's great. Yeah.
Stephanie, did you want to jump in on anything?
Yeah, sure. I was just going to offer that maybe we can bring back a report because we've got a meeting at the end of October to give some more information around the numbers, especially with the next change, with the opportunity now for parents to make their decision as to what they're going to do with the next group.
Sure.
Yeah. And I like how Jody says about 472. She's extremely thorough and she's on top of those numbers, and I certainly appreciate that.
I just had one other question that's sort of related to that piece, and then Brenda, you can tell me whether to go back in the queue or to ask my next question. But Jody, you also mentioned that the way the CERTs are maintaining their caseload from their home school, which I think is great, and that how that's being managed, it's being managed at the school level. So I did have a question from a parent about how the students that are remote would be supported. So I'm thinking from your statement that it would be best to direct them back to the school because it's not going to be the same at all the schools. Is that an accurate takeaway, or do you have something else that you want to share in that regard?
So were they wondering who their CERT would be?
No, just how the child would be supported. That's, learning remotely.
Yeah, I would definitely go back to the school with that to discuss and collaborate with them. We have given some guidance. Obviously, placements are going to be honored. So if the students' resource assistants, the CERT would be providing support as they would in class, but virtually, or if they're in option 3 where they have withdraw support, they would continue to be supported through their withdraw with the appropriate accommodations and expectations on their IEP that the CERT would support. So I would encourage them to go back to the school and discuss with the CERT what that will look like for their child. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. And then Brenda had another unrelated question. Do you want me to go back in the queue, or?
Is it a long one?
I don't think so. It's actually sort of more of a statement, to be honest, than a question. But
yeah, I mean, as long as Jessica's okay with it, because she's up in the queue. So I'd say go ahead because you're on a roll, and then we'll let Jessica have the floor.
Sure. Okay. So I don't want to come across the wrong way with this, but when Glenda was talking about the mental health supports and those specific groups, it didn't occur to me to mention specific spec ed students because I feel like they are always sort of part of the consideration. But then when you brought up your point about students with disabilities, and it made me kind of remember some of the conversations we've had around gifted students, and I just kind of want to put that group out there as well, because I do feel that quite often people don't quite understand the mental health concerns that we have with that group of students, and there's often a perception that they're an advantaged group. Like, so a lot of people first of all go, why are they in spec ed? They have an advantage. It's not that simple, we know, but there are some very unique mental health concerns with that group, and I have, to be frank, heard even from staff in the past it's been a few years now, that those students are not actually at increased risk of mental health concerns. So that statement, it's hard for me to shed that. It always makes me kind of wonder if they're being overlooked in some of those areas. And I think Jessica and I did our presentation a couple years ago. I think it was after those statements had been made, and I really felt that it went over well, and our SEAC members really understood. But I still feel like it bears repeating, and certainly ABC would be happy anytime to work with staff, if there's anything further to kind of learn around those particular students. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there as well. And that's it.
Thanks, Maria. Jessica, did you want to go next?
Sure. I have two questions, two very different questions. So first one, funny, Maria talked about the CERT supports. I'm just curious, I guess according to the public health protocol, we are not mixing cohorts of students, correct?
Students are permitted, Brenda, if you want me to answer, students are permitted to be in 2 cohorts following our quadmester model.
Thank you. What I meant was if some students are being serviced by CERT, typically they could be pulled from different classes. I'm thinking more like elementary model, I guess. Is that still continuing to happen, or is COVID allowing us not to be able to do that?
What we have told staff and CERTs is if they can pull students and be strategic in their scheduling, pull students from the same class, that is the best way to go. Otherwise, they would be pulling students one-on-one, and they would not be mixing kids from multiple classes. Really, the only exception to that are the students that are being pulled for the Empower program, and that was in consultation and with the approval of public health, because it is a program that's endorsed by SICK Kids, and we've had to make some specific changes to what that looks like in order to be able to provide that servicing. But otherwise, they should not be mixing students from multiple classes.
Thank you. The reason why I asked that question, because the model that the board is following is that the homeschool CERT is servicing both in-person and remote students. I'm just trying to wrap my head around how the quality or the frequency of the supports will continue to be robust enough if you cannot mix kids in person, and even online students, it's so hard to group them and share screen at the same time with multiple students for remedial support. Have the CERT hiring have increased? Like, how is the board dealing with or planning to deal with lack of time available by the CERT to provide proficient amount of time?
Jody has her hand up. I can start, and then Jody can certainly jump in. We made an intentional decision to leave the CERTs in our schools so that they could service both of the students who are in person and those who are virtual. I think by the very nature that not all of the students are in the building has permitted CERTs to have that time to support kids who are participating in that virtual platform. I can have Jody speak to any specific examples maybe that she's heard of, but by all accounts, the model has been working well at elementary.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Yep, go ahead, Jody.
We'll just add, if that's okay, because I was speaking to a CERT recently who is supporting her students virtually, actually both in school and online at the same time. And she was explaining to me how great it was going. She was a CERT in our summer programming. So she saw the value in what was being offered and in terms of virtual learning for her students. So she's really created a great program where she's bringing virtual and students in school. So she's in the school virtually working with her students that together in a small group. So I know that, as I said, that's one example, and we have left it up to schools to get creative in how they program and support those students, whether it's one CERT that's, dedicated to the virtual, or they what am I going to say, filter that caseload out to multiple certs. So they've been really creative in doing that and working with the iCerts and consultants to create a schedule that is going to support, as we mentioned, we honor that IPRC placement. So if they are on a withdraw, it will continue to be done. And as Stephanie mentioned there, knowing that there's some students that aren't in the building, they are able to support. So their caseload remains the same as it was, the same number of students that they're supporting. It just looks slightly different.
Okay, thank you. Now on to my second question. This has to do with the assessment. Thank you, Oliver, for explaining the processes of the assessment earlier. Just wondering what CCAT will look like this year, with some students being remote and some students in person and transitioning in between throughout the seasons.
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. We are in planning for that. We have been meeting and discussing how to address that. Where this is exactly the kind of the time of the school year where we are kind of placing our order for the CCAT materials. And so what we're doing right now is exploring what the locations can be, how we can assess those students who are virtual learners, and so that they can go through the CCAT testing as well as the students who are in classes in the schools. So we are exploring alternate sites and different scheduling of the testing so that we can follow all the pandemic requirements, while at the same time ensuring that all students have the opportunity to participate in that screening process.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to hearing the plans once you guys have it in place. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for the questions, and thanks to staff for taking the time to answer. I'm looking in Teams and I don't see anyone else's hands up. So just one last shout out if there's anybody that has a question they want to ask before we can let staff who want to leave go ahead and leave, and then we'll carry on with the rest of our agenda. Good. Okay.
Good night, everyone. I'll say good night.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for the
Take
presentation.
care.
We always appreciate the information sharing. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move along to item 3. So 3.1 is the approval of the minutes, and we have a few there to get through. So I'll do them one at a time in case there's any questions or comments on them. So, so the approval of the minutes for our June 5th meeting. Was there any additions, deletions, any questions, comments? Sorry, I'm just watching. Okay, and if not, to move to approve those minutes. So Nancy, I see that you're moving to approve the minutes. Do I have a seconder? Diane seconded, thank you. Okay, and if we can go to the approval of minutes for the August 17th meeting. Is there any questions, comments? If I can have a mover for those. Nancy, you're moving that? Okay, great. Can I get a seconder? Diane, thank you again for seconding. And to the approval of the minutes for our September 28th meeting, which I guess was what it was. Is there any questions on that? We want to just
sorry, Brenda, I had a typo on one.
Okay, yeah, Maria, do you want to go ahead?
Just under 1.1, it says prayer led by the Maria Lorenko. So I think I've been called worse, but I think just the needs to come out of there. That's all.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
And then I'd be happy to move those.
Okay, perfect. So so I've got Maria moving those. Thank you, Andrea. I see that you'll remove that, so thank you. So I've got Maria moving the minutes for the September 28th meeting. Do I have a seconder? Rick seconding it. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so moving on to 4, do we have any declarations of conflict of interest? No? Okay, perfect. Business arising from previous meetings. I don't have anything on my business arising notes, so unless I'm missing something, please let me know, but I don't have anything at this. Yeah, Maria, hand up, go ahead.
So I actually had a few things that I wanted to bring up here. A couple are sort of brief, and at least one would probably lead into a bit more of discussion. So can I make a suggestion that we sort of combine it with the SEAC discussion? So, because I don't want to disrupt kind of the flow of the agenda. I know there's no time specifically allocated here.
Yeah. Yeah,
but,
do you want to get through the rest of it and then we'll jump to the bottom?
Yeah, I think that would be probably good.
Okay, is everybody okay with that? Yes, I'm assuming. I'm not seeing any hands saying otherwise. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do that. So I'm moving to number 6, which is Special Education Board Policy Review. We don't currently have any policies right now that are needing to come to SEAC for review. But we keep an eye on those after every policy meeting, and if there's anything that needs to come through or we see something coming up on the cycle, we'll make sure to add that to the SEAC agenda. Item number 7, we have a few items here. So 7.1 is, sorry, go ahead, Maria.
Sorry, I did type in hand up for number 6.
That's okay, no worries. I can't see it, so it's okay.
That's okay, no problem. Just a quick thing. I know in the past, and I don't know if it's every year or not, but we do have our policy committee chair here. I know in the past they have sometimes at the beginning of the year put together a schedule of what they plan to review for that school year. And so I was wondering if that is done this year, if that could be shared with SEAC so that we kind of have an idea of what's coming up and which policies might apply to us. And then if people want to look at them kind of on their own time, that would just be a way to help us plan. So
we can, I can informally answer. Nancy's got a thumb up with an absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's not a problem. We get a list that actually just came at our first policy meeting of this school year. So it had the list of the policies that are up for review in the cycle. So happy to share that. We can have that sent out to the group, no problem.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. So 7.1, it's got my name beside it, but I'm actually going to refer this over to Trustee Guzzo. It's Policy II-40, Bullying Prevention and Intervention Working Group. So Nancy, not to put you on the spot, but I'm wondering if you can speak about it. It was something that came up at our last policy meeting with a decision to review that policy through a working group. Do you want to talk a little bit about it and just sort of mention the representation that we're looking for?
Absolutely. Thank you, Brenda. So we are looking at reviewing the policy II-40 Bullying Prevention and Intervention Working Group. And our goal is to have it brought back to the policy meeting for the November meeting. And we've asked for representation on the working group, and Director Daly is will be getting the group together. So we've asked there'll be 3 trustees, a representative plus an alternate from both SEAC and CPIC, as long as a representative from elementary and a representative from high school, with a safe school superintendent, and then the superintendent that will oversee a policy. And just to overlap, we are waiting for appointment of 3 new superintendents. So once that portfolio is handed over, that will also make the list that Maria just asked for in the previous comment. That will be forthcoming as well. So we can definitely share that with you. So the ministry had said that they had put out a survey to review the anti-bullying policies for most of the boards. We were supposed to see something come down. We haven't seen anything yet, but that being said, there's no reason why we can't be proactive. So it was decided through policy that we would review this and get feedback from those stakeholders so that we could work through it for recommendations back to the policy committee for ultimately proposed changes to the policy to go back to the board for approval and implementation. So tonight our ask is if we can have a volunteer and then an alternate in case that volunteer is unable to work or to attend the meeting. I would assume that the first initial meeting will probably be about 2 hours in length. I can't say how many meetings we will have. It really will depend on how the group moves together. And then we would also have it come back to SEAC or CPIC, whatever the respective groups would be, so that it could be shared. So if there's any further feedback, but what we would like tonight is for you to put forward a name of somebody who will help bring the SEAC lens to the policy.
Thanks, Nancy. So we've already had Rhonda Cannell jump up with her hand up, and I was going to offer first come, first serve, which is how we try to do most of the filling of these spots. So Rhonda has jumped up to say that she's interested. So I think we've got one. So I think what we're looking for, Rhonda, I see your hand up. Do you want to speak to this, or is it just to reaffirm that you want your hand in this?
Just making sure, I want to be involved.
Okay. So great. So we've got Rhonda down. And Rhonda, would you be looking to be the lead or the alternate for this representation?
I'm good. Unless someone else wants to step up, I'll be the lead.
Okay.
Whoever else steps up, we can discuss who's lead, alternate. I'm good with that.
Perfect. So if there's anybody else that's interested, thank you, Rhonda. If there's anyone else that's interested in this committee and being a part of this committee, you can let me know now, or you can think on it. And but if you could get something to me as soon as possible, I know that we want to get these names forward, as soon as we can. So we'll definitely put your name forward, Rhonda. And if somebody else is looking to be a part of this committee, please let myself know, or you can let Nancy know with a copy to me, whichever. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Did anybody have any questions for Nancy on that? Are we good to go to 7.2? Okay, all good? Okay, perfect. So 7.2, we have SEAC member invitation for focus group on school-based rehabilitation therapy services. So this was an email that went out. Correct me if I'm wrong, Andrea, but an email had gone out to all of SEAC with the letter, and it was someone that's doing a study, and they were looking for participation from various stakeholders, some of those being superintendents, but also looking for some participation from special education advisory committee members. So did everybody get that letter? Do you remember receiving that? If you haven't, let us know and we can resend it. But if you did get it, maybe take another look at it again and determine if you think it's something that you're interested in. And then there's information there on how to indicate if you're interested in participating. So I just wanted to make sure that we mentioned that in case someone didn't see it and would be interested in being a part of this study. Is there any questions? I have the letter I can read out if we need that, and if not, we can just resend it if people didn't get it. Good, quiet, okay. 7.3 is our uniform committee report, and it has chair beside it, but I'm going to, I could certainly report back, but we had other members from our SEAC team here that have been on the uniform committee. And so I think it'd be just as valuable to have them perhaps bring some comments back to our SEAC group. So Maria and Paul, am I missing someone else?
I was on it as well, but not from SEAC.
Right. Yes, of course. Yeah. So I think from SEAC, so it was Maria and Paul. If either one of you or both of you wanted to make some comments back to the trustees, or sorry, to the trustees, to SEAC on that uniform committee, how it went, maybe what the process was like, and just fill everybody in, that'd be great. If not, I'm happy to do it.
This is Paul. I can start.
Sure, Paul, if you want to go ahead, and then
lot
Maria can jump in.
Sure. A lot of my career was involved in doing RFPs and negotiations and all that. So it's a very well run process. Daniel Kajuka, I forget his last name, worked it very well. We went through four different companies that bidded, did the evaluations, and did the all the evaluations as a committee. And I know they have come up with a decision, but the decision at this point in time, my understanding, is still being worked with the company that had the most had the best bid, and still I believe is set at a confidential period. Confidential at this point in time.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Maria, did you want to add anything to that? Because I know that we, again, there was a lot of participation from the members on that committee. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of share a little bit of the process and our involvement in it. I thought I really appreciated the opportunities that we had there, and we were provided with kind of a draft RFP that would go out to potential vendors and different areas that they would be scored on and so on. And representing SEAC, we had an opportunity to add some different things in there, and I don't know how much I can share, but some very specific spec ed related and things that came out of the feedback from SEAC. We were able to change the scoring a little bit to give that an appropriate weighting in the process, and I felt that the whole process was very receptive to those needs, and it made its way into a few different parts of the process. I felt that the vendors definitely provided an appropriate focus on that area and gave us some good feedback showing their commitment to that. I felt that different members on the committee, especially some of the staff, definitely saw the importance of that piece, and definitely based on what we received from all the vendors, including the probably successful one, I would hope that parents that have these concerns know that these vendors are willing to accommodate whatever is needed to make sure that students have uniforms that they're comfortable in, and that meet their different physical needs. And certainly, I think if parents are having challenges in that area, I hope that they would bring it forward to whoever, and if it's a member of SEAC, that we can kind of help fix that if it needs to be fixed. Because I've heard stories in the past where people haven't been given the accommodations that they needed, but certainly I felt in the process it should be there. And I think that we are awarding a contract to a vendor who committed to providing that for our students. So I think that's a good thing for people to be aware of.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. And I'll echo what both Paul and Maria said. I really felt that there was a great, not emphasis, because there was an emphasis on everything, but I really felt that there was a good focus that was put on the needs of our students that have different uniform needs. And listen, those weren't just specific, let's say, to gross motor or fine motor, but just students that, may have some different you may have some different needs with sizes or whatever it was. They were very receptive. And what I found really interesting actually through the process is that they actually most of them already had mechanisms in place to deal with a lot of the requests. And somewhere along the line, I think some of that may have gotten lost in the communication maybe to families over the years, because they all seemed very amiable to any of the requests that we had, with including processes and policies around our spec ed students. They went over and above, in my opinion, with a lot of the proposals that were put forward, but a lot of them already had mechanisms in there. And I was quite shocked that there was things that I didn't know were even available that were actually available. And I'd heard so many parents have some questions over the years. So I think one of the things I'll definitely be looking for will be whoever that successful vendor is, that we find a mechanism to make sure that we really highlight the specifics around those needs for those students, so that people don't have to dig for it and they know that it's there. So that was really just sort of the comment that I have. But it was a very inclusive process, and I think that all of our voices were heard, and your SEAC members, guys, did a great job representing SEAC there and making sure that our population was well represented. So. And when we have the successful proponent and that is public, we'll make sure we bring it back. I think they're just working out some details now on that. So thanks, guys, for your input on that. 7.4, the Equity and Inclusion Committee report. And I'm going to chat a little bit about this and probably ask Trustee Guzzo as well to jump in, as we both sit on this committee. But the Equity and Inclusion Committee is a great committee. It's comprised of a number of different stakeholders. There's some trustee representation on there. There's some SEAC representation, superintendents, we have principals, we have some community partners, and it's a great committee that tries to meet on a fairly regular basis, where we talk about everything that's going on with programming in our board, to make sure that we are trying to be mindful of our equity and inclusion needs as they relate to our students in our system, what we can be doing to support them, the ways that we can increase awareness. There's an element of PD. Some of the good things we've seen that have come out of that have been some action items that we've seen come out of that have been some PD sessions for our trustees on some different areas, everything from LGBTQ to anti-Black racism, to the Indigenous population. So it's a really, really well-rounded group where we discuss a lot of important topics at the table. And again, how our students are impacted, how our administrators and our staff are working to try to implement a lot of the programs and resources and support our students from an equity and inclusion lens. So, I wanted to bring that forward to let the group here know that we do have SEAC representation on there. And, I really try to bring forward the lens from our SEAC group. Before I dive into one thing, Nancy, am I missing anything that I should bring forward from our last meeting? Specifics?
You're going to hear my dog going crazy, so I apologize. I don't think so. I think really it's that addition of that spec ed lens that is being brought to the table, which is good. And I think there's been some discussions in regards to how we can look at that moving forward. And I don't know if you wanted to talk about it at this point, Brenda, but what some of the things that we can do and bring forward to the board.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. So thank Nancy. So part of the mandate that we have as members on that committee is to take a look at the position that we're in and really try to sort of see where that level of influence can be in the position that we're in. So from a trustee perspective, from a teacher perspective, principal, admin, and I often go in, well, I always go in actually from a SEAC perspective and try to bring that lens. And I try to take a look at what are some things that we could be doing that we could involve SEAC and some of these equity and inclusion conversations and program development and things like that. And so one of the things that did come forward, and it's come forward the last two meetings, and it's been sort of top of mind for me, and then I wanted to get some feedback from some of the committee members here. And what I'll do is I apologize, there's been so much going on, but what I'll do is I'll make sure to share with everyone when we do have an upcoming meeting, just so that you can see the agenda and see some of the things that we're working on. I can continue to report back, but I think it'd be great if you saw some of the things that are coming down the pipe with the committee, and perhaps there's some comments from SEAC or some things that you'd like me to bring forward to that committee on behalf of our group here. But one of the things that we talked about, we talked a lot about awareness days and recognition months, and we look at we have Black History Month, and we have Asian Heritage Month, we have Portuguese Heritage Month. We have a lot of those really great opportunities within our system, system-wide, to recognize some of our specific populations and to build some programming around that and to build some curriculum around that. And one of the things that's come up, and I wanted to get feedback from our group here, was there is a UN initiative, for those who are not aware, and it's called International Day of Persons with Disabilities. And it happens every December the 3rd. And it's an international initiative, and there's a number of cities and municipalities across the world who celebrate. And they will often that day they'll raise the flag, there'll be proclamations, they'll build some sort of community awareness piece around it, some sort of social media campaign around this International Day of Persons with Disabilities. And every year they have a theme. And this year's theme actually is all around how every disability is not visible, which I think is really, really key because there's so many disabilities that people are not aware of because it's not, right there in front of them visibly. And so I started to think about, is there an opportunity for us to bring that forward at a board level to actually implement that as a day of recognition across our system? And, that could be the start of it, with perhaps looking to build on that and build in some curriculum or some communication, or, we know that there's a number of students and staff on our board who live with disabilities. And if they don't themselves, they probably have a family member who does. And so we just thought it could be maybe a nice initiative for SEAC to support, to bring that piece forward. And if people thought that that was a good idea, I'd be happy to take that to the next step and put something formal, maybe by the means of a notice of motion at our board meeting. But I wanted to get your thought on that, because obviously I don't want this to just be, from my perspective only. So I wonder what your thoughts were on us, maybe as a SEAC group, sort of putting some support behind an initiative like that.
I think that sounds great, Brenda. It's kind of a lot to try and process there, but I think it's a great idea.
Sorry, and I know I'm babbling. I'm trying to get it all in, and I can definitely send up a follow-up to you. But I think the idea behind it, specifically for that International Day of Persons with Disabilities, was just, I was trying to find a way for us to have a universal recognition in our board of persons with disabilities that wasn't specific to one group or another. And I thought that that would be a great way of doing that, and we could just start by recognizing that day on December the 3rd. And then talk with, maybe talk with staff and talk with, the curriculum group on how we could build on that. And is there a way for us to maybe do a little bit more with that in each of our schools and see what that could look like? Nancy, did you have any comments on that?
No, I think that for us to get moving on something like this, I think it's important that when we discuss it here, which it is, and then we bring it back to the board to get an emotion. And it's not that I don't think there's much really to talk about, except for it's encompassing. You've hit everything and why this day makes the most sense. So I think it's an important thing to look at. We celebrate lots of different things. I think this one is representative of SEAC and what we talk about here.
So I can summarize that. I know, like you said, Maria, that's a lot. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm rushing it because I'm looking at the time and trying to get through the rest of our agenda. But I'm happy to put a little bit of a blurb out to the SEAC group. We do have a board meeting tomorrow night. So there's an opportunity for me to put a notice of motion there if there's the support of the group here for us to put something like that at the table. But I can send out a little synopsis of that and let people think about that and get back to me and let me know. But if there wasn't any hesitation on that, I'd love to see if we could do that as a group. And then I can bring that back to the Equity and Inclusion Committee and say this is something that SEAC's gotten behind. Okay, oh yeah, sorry, go ahead, Maria, please. Yep.
Sorry, just a quick, you mentioned that there was SEAC representation, so I'm just a bit confused on that, and maybe I've missed something because I don't remember hearing about this committee before, but I forget things. So is there someone else, or are you on there as a trustee and also with a SEAC lens, or are you on there as a SEAC rep, or is there someone else? Yes. I'm just trying to understand.
So I'm on there as the chair of SEAC. So my memory will be fuzzy on this because the Equity and Inclusion Committee came in and it didn't come in with a big fanfare. It just kind of started. And I went in there. We didn't initially have representation from SEAC. We had our superintendent of spec ed at the time that was there. And I asked if I could be a part of it. And I think that's how it came in. And I went on there, as the chair of SEAC. So I don't go in with a trustee lens. I go in there strictly with a chair of SEAC lens.
Okay, and I guess I'm just thinking like maybe it would be good to get more updates on this committee going forward, and
Yeah.
if there's other committees, because I think there's also, and I'm not going to get the name of it, but there's a mental health, I think, committee that has a SEAC rep maybe, and it would be great for us to hear, just a quick few minutes when there's updates, and also gives us an opportunity to provide our feedback to take back to the committee, hopefully when there is.
Yeah. Absolutely. There hasn't been a meeting of the mental health leadership team in a while. And that one I do remember coming out at SEAC, and I think I might have been the only one that put my hand up at the time. And so I've just sort of stayed on there as chair of SEAC. But there's always an opportunity to at any time for us to add representation if possible. I have no problem going in and advocating to say, can we add another voice to the table? And we're not ever usually turned down for those requests. So, certainly for even something like the Equity and Inclusion Committee or the Mental Health Leadership Committee, I can definitely continue to bring those. Oh yeah, Rhonda, you're on that committee as well, aren't you? I see your hand up. Yes, I'm so sorry.
Make sure that you were clear about that. Thanks, Brenda.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have recognized that. So yeah, for sure, we can continue to bring those reports back. And if people are interested in a committee that's there, let us know. It's not a problem to typically to be able to add another member to that committee, provided we don't have a bazillion people and just gets overwhelming sometimes. Rhonda, did you have anything else you wanted to comment?
No. I just wanted to make sure you.
Okay. Okay. So I'll move on from that, and thank you everyone for your patience. Stephanie, do you want to go ahead with your superintendent's report?
Sure. So I will start by saying that many of the updates that I would have provided tonight was shared by the team, and I certainly appreciate the work and efforts of everyone that participated in the presentation. I hope that it was evident that the focus really has been on establishing and maintaining a consistent thread of support between our home school and our virtual school to support the transitions for all of our students, and especially between the two modalities. With respect to updates, just a few items to share. Halton Catholic was represented at the first Learning Disabilities Association Parent Support Workshop. Jody and I spoke to the return to school process in Halton Catholic, and we participated in a moderated Q&A session with participants. I do want to thank Jody for her participation and to all of the leads for their contributions. Jody has spoken a few times this evening, and I just wanted to formally acknowledge that she is the new coordinator of special education, and she truly has hit the ground running and has played an integral role in supporting both the in-person and virtual staff, students, and families, and I'm very grateful to that. With respect to staff development, in addition to the professional development that's already been highlighted, we held the first new CERT and new set in services. In September, we had a number of topics that were covered to support the staff who are new to their roles. Staff have also been provided, or PD has also been provided to the 3 newly hired virtual teachers, the 2 gifted sets and the STC set. We want to ensure that everybody has all of the information as much as you can give them. Many are very new teachers to get up and running. Our new empowered teachers were trained. And as I mentioned earlier, schools are in the midst of planning the support at each of their school sites. And moving into November, I know it's only October, but our BA and Psych staff are scheduled to attend the virtual Geneva Center symposium at that time. And with respect to mental health and well-being, Glenda and Patricia did speak to the School Mental Health Ontario and the toolkit that's been provided. I think it's worth noting that in addition to the PA Day, information, we are committed to continuing to work through all of the resources. I can't even say how many resources have been provided, and that's part of the ongoing professional development planning as the year rolls out. And also worth noting is that there are tips and resources for families that are available on our board site, and they are found on the Return to School plan. Glenda spoke earlier in answering the question that we are going to be starting a mental health Twitter feed, and she's going to be continuing with the tip of the month and getting more of her staff involved in that. So I certainly look forward to really embracing those resources that were provided and making that a very strong focus for us this year. And that's about it at this time. As I said, I think most things were already covered in our presentation this evening.
Great, thanks, Stephanie. Did anyone have any questions for Stephanie? We might take it easy on you for your first superintendent's report.
Perfect. I'll take it.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks for that. And again, welcome. We look forward to having you as part of our group. So it's a good group here. So just before I move to our trustee report, was there any questions for Stephanie at all? Okay, so oh, go ahead, Maria.
Sorry,
that's okay.
I was just gonna say I don't think her first meeting was all that easy, because I think last week was her first meeting.
Right, fair enough.
I think it might have been a bit stressful.
Right. Yes, fair enough. Fair enough. We'll just forget that one happened.
We do have minutes.
Right, we do have minutes. We do, but we'll call this the official. We'll call this the official one.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, good. So trustee reports. So trustee Dwart is not here this evening. Trustee Guzzo, did you want to give a trustee report?
Yes, thank you. So as you're aware, because we did have a back to school planning meeting back in, I think it was July. We've had several special called meetings throughout the summer, 7 to be exact. All of them were around school plans and updating parents, and the moving target that the ministry continued to hand down to us in regards to our back to school planning. Our GSN, our grant for student needs numbers from the ministry came in late June. And the 2020-21 budget estimates was presented at the July 29th special board meeting. For those of you that are interested, it's available online. And the last meeting that we had in August on the 19th was our last back to school reopening plan special called meeting. And the last 2 meetings have been our regular called meetings. We have another meeting tomorrow evening. We have had a couple of different motions that were passed. Masking was mandated for JK to grade 3 to be included for students. Obviously, medical exemptions were applied, and it was implemented with a non-punitive lens. There was also there's a terms of reference set up for STEM extracurricular engagement committee that will be formed in October. We also presented a motion to cap class sizes to 25. Prior to that, we had 396 classes that were 25 and above. The last school reorganization. Now, keep in mind that it will change again with the new option to opt to online or in person coming up. But we now only have 75 classes that are at 25 and the rest are under. Our average, I believe, was at 20, and I don't have it in front of me, I apologize. I think it was 20.7 is the average class size, which was actually less than what we had proposed at the board meeting with a hard no more than 25, but an average of 22.16. We talked about what happened at the policy meeting, which is the anti-bullying, and we've got a representative for that upcoming meeting. So thank you very much. We have a special called meeting tomorrow. Not a special call. We have a regular board meeting tomorrow, and I believe there's only one action item on the table. So we hope to have everybody tune in, and that's it for the trustees' report.
Great, thanks, Nancy. Is there any questions at all for Trustee Guzzo? No, good. Okay, on to item number 9, which is SEAC discussion. So Maria, did you? I don't have. Oh, hold on. Let me double check my notes because it could be. No, I don't have anything formally on here. So did you want to circle back with what we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, so I had I don't know if anyone else has anything they want to say. I don't know if they might want to go ahead, because I had some things from Business Arising, and then some of them kind of segue into discussion items, I think. So I'm going to try and kind of cover it all. Okay. So if anyone else has anything, I'll start, and if anyone wants to put their hand up, I guess. Just one quick thing, the Maxi letter, I know that's complete, but I was just wondering if we had received any reply, and if not, did we want to follow up? I know it's probably, like, with everything going on, not a huge priority, but probably not difficult to just do a quick follow-up as well.
So just to offer, Maria, you don't typically
Yeah.
hear back from Maxi on that level. They don't tend to respond to your letters.
So I think the letter went to the Minister of Education, and from I know some of the work I'm involved in at the provincial level, I've been told that anything the minister receives, they have to reply to, and that's been my experience as well.
Sorry, I was under the impression that it went through Maxi.
It was the subject matter was Maxi, and I think the ministry person who's on Maxi was on the letter, but it was directed to the Minister of Education.
Okay.
I don't believe that we've received a response back. Andrea, could you confirm that? Maybe?
Sorry, Brenda, I was just typing. There no response yet.
Oh, great. Okay.
But it did go to the Minister of Education also, yeah.
Okay. So I don't think there's any harm. I think, like you said, Maria, I mean, with everything going on, it might be a moot point at this point, but I don't think there's any harm in following up. Andrea, if you would be amiable to helping us out with a follow-up email, if that's, a typical course of action, I don't see any issue with that.
Sure.
Okay.
We can draft something.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, and then I didn't know, like, there's some things on here that are complete, so I didn't know if we, like, just a housekeeping thing, if they should be dropped off or if we want to keep them on there for whatever reason, but there are a few things that I feel like there's things we talk about and then sometimes they don't necessarily kind of get followed through, and this schedule is a good mechanism to keep those things kind of alive, not forgotten. And, like, just going back to the June meeting, there was a couple things we talked about there. So we talked about the ministry funding, how the ministry funds spec ed. And I think our finance people were going to share the memo that explains how that all works. So we talked about that postal code and some of those complicated formulas. So I don't believe we had that letter shared with us. But we also talked about maybe doing a letter to the ministry to talk about the funding formula. Now, I'm not saying that's something we need to do right now, because, again, there is a lot of different things going on. But, do we park it? Like, there did seem to be agreement to doing something about like that. Is that something we put on here to park it so that we don't forget? And maybe we take on at some point. Or I know what some SEACs do is they'll have, like, subcommittees, right? Because there's so much, and there's only so much time, and our meetings have been going longer anyways. Do we create maybe a subcommittee to work on something like that? So that was something that I thought maybe should be on this schedule. We also talked about at that meeting about having Aaron Oak come to a meeting in the fall. So I don't know if anything's happened with that, but
they're coming. We've reached out to them, Maria. That's on my update for the next meeting. We have reached out to them to come. We just haven't heard back yet.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I think, and I'm sure there's some things that are happening in the background, but, it would be, I guess it would be nice for everyone to sort of know what's on the list and kind of know the status. And also, just in terms of the budget, so as we know, one of our requirements, one of our things we're supposed to do as SEAC is to review the budget every year and to participate in the budget process. And then that didn't happen this year because of when the funding numbers came out. And I know I think it was at a board meeting actually that I submitted a question about that, about SEACs. How would SEAC fulfill that role? And I know we've had a change in leadership, but there was the answer that SEAC would get a report in the fall. So again, I don't know if that's coming up later, but we have never seen, this group hasn't seen the SEAC budget for the upcoming year, and we didn't really participate in that process. And there's also been some additional funding announcements throughout the summer that I think provided some additional money for spec ed and mental health. So just wondering how you know, how are we going to participate in that process?
So we can have it added. I mean, any of those can be added as an agenda item, Maria. Like if you want, I mean, we try to come up with, you know, and when we set the agendas, we try to come up with, you know, utilize. I don't mean to jump in here, but just when I'm thinking about it,
No,
you know,
we
try to utilize sort of what's been on our spec ed plan and requests for, you know, certain presentations and things like that, and you know, we try to really look at what's there, and some things are going to get missed for sure. So, you know, by all means, if there's an item, you know, that somebody wants to have added to the agenda and we don't have a crazy packed agenda because there's something else being presented that night, you know, send it, like, for sure. So if that budget piece, you know, is sitting there and it's sort of on your mind, and maybe it has slipped through off someone else's mind because of all this stuff going on, but you still have it there top of mind, sorry, excuse me, for anybody, just, you know, send an email and say, can we have this added? You know, we were going to do it in June and things went off the rail and we've been back to school programming. You know, could we have that? I am always happy to have things like that added if we have misstepped or forgotten or anything like that, or if it's just the will of the group. So, you know, by all means, happy to add any of that stuff if it's been missed. And if it's been missed, I can assure you it hasn't been an intentional miss. It's probably just been because there's been so many other things going on with all of this back to school planning in the situation. So, you know, but please, I mean, bring it forward. I'm happy to hear it.
And I think that's a good point. Like, and I'm not suggesting that any of it's been intentional, but that's sort of what I like about, because I've used this schedule in the past, you know, when I worked in the private sector for different committees, or when I was secretary of a board as well. And it's just a good way to make sure things don't get forgotten.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think you're muted, Maria.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Trying to remember what I said, but
yeah.
Yeah, no, and I hear you. I'm not suggesting that's intentional, that any of these things have been, anybody's trying to push these things aside.
Yeah.
But that is, you know, I've worked with this schedule when I was in the private sector, when I was secretary of a board, and it's just a good way. It's kind of like a to-do list, just to make sure you don't sort of forget about things. And sometimes maybe eventually, and I think we've had this at SEAC too, where eventually something comes off the list because, you know, we haven't had time, and now it's like, it's kind of past its prime.
Yeah.
But it is a way to, so these are some things that we did talk about. And I think the budget is definitely a key one. So I'm not sure if there's been any thought about how to involve SEAC in that process. And the other one that is kind of a big, so this was to do with the spec ed plan and some of the discussions we had there. And I don't think SEAC members received the finalized spec ed plan. I know it's posted online, but one of the things that we had a bit of discussion on again at the June 15th meeting was that community consultation standard. And there were some specific things we talked about there. And again, we talked about having more of a discussion in the fall, in September or in the fall, early in the school year, to talk about how we're going to meet this community consultation requirement. That's a ministry requirement of spec ed plans. So that's kind of a business arising type of thing. But also I want to ask, because I did share that the standard requires boards to include information about internal and external reviews. And I did talk about some that this board has specifically done, but nothing was changed in the spec ed plan. So I'm trying to understand what happened there, because to my mind, we don't comply with the standard. So did we, when we reported to the ministry, did we say we complied with this standard? And how did we figure we complied if those reports weren't mentioned in the plan?
Stephanie, do you want to take that? I mean, that's out of my wheelhouse to comment on.
Honestly, Brenda, I'd have to look into it because I wouldn't want to claim that I have that information at this point. But if it's a point of clarification that needs to be made, and if I can loop back and see what where we are with that, I do have the actual plan, but I don't know about the reporting mechanism. So I'm happy to report back on that.
And I can share some more details, and I can also point to the part of the video where it was discussed, if you want.
I'm fine to do that. Like, I'm fine to connect and maybe get some background information, and I can talk to Andrea as well. I'm sure she took minutes, and there's some background information I probably should review. I just wanted to point out, and I was wondering, the business arising schedule, Maria, that you were talking about, are you talking about the business arising template that went out to SEAC with all of the documents for the meeting?
Yes, the business arising from previous meetings.
Right. So it drops off, I think the copy I've got here drops off at April. So it sounds like there's a few items that should be added from June.
That's what I'm suggesting, yes.
Yeah.
These are things we talked about, and there seemed to be agreement to do them. Again, I'm not saying they should have been done by now, or they should be done before the next meeting.
Your point is we should add them to the list.
Yeah. Let's not forget about them. We've talked about them. There seemed to be agreement.
Right.
Maybe we never get to them, but let's just not forget about them. And again, I don't mind the idea. I don't know how other members feel, but if there's just so much on our plate, but if people really want to get some of these things done, I don't mind the idea of having like some subcommittees that can kind of, do the legwork and bring something back. I mean, that's maybe something to explore if there's interest from others.
For sure. And I know we've done that in the past. I mean, we've been on this as long, the same amount of time, Maria. So I know that that's done in the past. And I think it's a great idea. I always encourage subcommittees because, there's things that some people are more passionate about than other people. There's things people are like, yeah, let's do it. I mean, I know when we did the social media, when we were looking at parent engagement, there was a bunch of us who sort of jumped onto that. Subcommittees are a great idea. I just, I'm conscious of it always sort of ends up being the same people that are on the subcommittees, and that's okay if people have the ability to do it. I just worry that people get really caught up with an idea and then they want to have the subcommittee and then it falls to the wayside and one person ends up sort of carrying that. So, if we could break this down and establish maybe out of that business arising a few items that we think would be better served on a subcommittee, like we did with that parent engagement social media piece, absolutely. If that's the will of SEAC, let's totally do that and then see who is on side to be on those committees. I think it's a great idea and they're really productive.
My husband would probably kill me. He hears me suggesting more committees.
Yeah, that's why I'm tapped out.
I just want to put the alternative out there because I know that our time in these meetings is kind of limited. We've already gone over. All our last few meetings have been longer, but I think they've been great discussions. So I don't think, I don't mind, but I know there's a limit in how much we can do as a group.
So why don't we start maybe, Maria, with some of those items that we think or that we know should be added to that business arising piece, as been brought up. Let's put them on there. And then we have them on there. And, we can certainly have people give some thought to those before our next meeting. If there's some things that we can do between now and then, we can certainly do that over email. And if not, then let's have it on there. And then, we can have a further discussion on those specific items at the next meeting. So, I mean, I think that's the way to do it. The budget piece, maybe that's a different conversation. I'm happy to circle back with Stephanie on that specific piece to see how we want to handle that moving forward. Given that we weren't able to have that meeting and that input because of everything that was going on. But yeah, I mean, let's add some of those items for sure to business arising so that, and then we can make a decision as a group what we want to keep, what we don't want to keep, or what we want to, follow through with.
So do you want me to quickly just type those up since I have my notes?
100%.
I can share them with the whole group and then everyone can kind of think about them and.
Yep, that'd be perfect. Yep, for sure. Then we can add them and then we can decide what we want to keep or drop off or add to or whatever we want to do.
And you know what, if there's other things like, I mean, I went back and listened to some of the recording, but my memory's not what it used to be. If there's other things I'm missing that other people remember we talked about doing, please feel free to add them on too.
For sure. Because I think it's always great. I mean, we always want to have initiatives that we're working towards, things that we're working on, things that, that are important to us as a group. There's going to be things that are going to come up that we don't expect, like global pandemics, and funding changes and all of those sorts of things. And it doesn't mean that those other things don't stay relevant or important. It just means that we might need this reminder to bring them back because they don't go away. They've just sort of been moved to the side to deal with more pressing matters. And so I think it is great to have those on there so that we can circle back because, we may have a couple of meetings that are a little bit light. This was a heavy meeting because we're doing the update on the back to school. But we may have a meeting that isn't as heavy and we can certainly dedicate some time to some of these other important issues.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I was kind of thinking the same thing. And I thought, are people going to be like, you know what, we just have to focus on this current situation. And I understand that that's a priority, but I think we do have to. I think COVID's been here for a while, a lot longer than any of us originally expected. I don't see it going away anytime soon. So we have to learn to work with it and around it. And I think, like some of these things are sort of core issues.
Yeah,
So
and I think some of them work together too, Marie. I mean, I think if we look at them, right, like, we're talking about things like transition meetings. Doesn't matter how they happen. Are the transition meetings happening? What's the mechanism for how they're happening? Communication to families, clear communication. So there's a lot of items that work part and parcel. They might look a little bit different because of the environment that we're in right now, but they're still important. So how are we communicating to families? How are we engaging with them? Things like these committee participations, what's our voice at the table, policy reviews, all of those things don't go away. And I think, certainly we're going to have to look at certain things that might be a little bit different. Things like, the supports in the schools because they have to be virtual or whatnot. But I agree, there's a number of these items that are just core and they might look a little different, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be focusing on those and, moving that needle forward. I don't think anything should be pushed to the side because of something else for an extended period of time. Those are just my thoughts. Anyone else? Rhonda, I saw your face pop up. Do you want to comment?
No, I think they're good thoughts actually. And I do like the idea of all of us being more involved, and the whole subcommittee idea is a good one. Just historically, and Stephanie, just so you know, I'm like the eldest fossil of SEAC. I'm like 20 years here. We used to do a lot of that, like a lot of subcommittee work where we designated, all of us to certain initiatives. And I think that's a really good way to go. And people do have, I know I'm like kind of diverting from your discussion, Brenda, sorry.
Oh.
But just, I do think it's a really good idea for people to commit themselves to things that they really feel passionate and committed to. So, and yeah, we can do really good work here. And I just want to also say, Stephanie, welcome to our SEAC. I feel like, and to Nancy as well. And is there anybody else new on the group that we haven't acknowledged? I know Nancy, Stephanie. Is there anyone else, Brenda? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
I just want to say welcome. Yeah. And
thanks, Rhonda. I appreciate it.
Tight for the roller coaster ride is a lot of fun because Spec Ed is a whole different world from the other parts. Yeah, it's really great. Yeah.
I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rhonda. Maria, you had your hand up?
Yeah, just one other thing I wanted to add, and I think we're kind of all seem to be on the same wavelength here. But I think the other thing I like about subcommittees is I think some people are maybe not always comfortable speaking in the larger group, and now maybe that our meetings are being recorded and posted. It's maybe not everyone's comfort zone, but the subcommittees would be private, and so maybe people might feel more comfortable in that atmosphere. So that's I think another good reason. But again, there has to be interest in people to participate. So I guess we'll see.
No, I totally agree with you on that, Maria, that there are people definitely do not like speaking in front of like 25, 30 people. I like the idea of us all like just devoting ourselves to different initiatives that we care about. Like not that we don't care about everything, but we do, but that we feel passionate about and committed. So yeah, let's go on that route because we used to do that 15 years ago, and it's a good idea. And I do that on other boards as well. Like there's always, and actually other boards that I belong to, we actually have subcommittees that are, of course, this board as well. We have committees that are already designated that you have to belong to. It's interesting. We should do that more here.
Okay, perfect. So thanks everybody. I think that was a great conversation. So Maria, if you're okay with typing up those items for us, that'd be great. We can take a look and add some of those on, and then we'll have those available for everybody to take a look at.
Yeah, not a problem.
Perfect. Okay, so if we're good, again, I'm just conscious of time. You know, I'm never one to rush the meetings. I want to make sure that we always have our voices, but I also appreciate everyone taking time at the end of their day. So if we're good, I'm just going to talk about our next meeting, which is Monday, October the 26th. And as I mentioned, there has been a request from Erin Oak on a presentation for the school-based rehabilitation services. So we have not heard back from them, which I don't think is, probably not shocking given everything that's going on right now with back to school. We haven't heard back from them yet, but I hope that we'll have a confirmation from them. Okay, and then 11.1, I didn't have any, Andrew, did we receive any, is there anybody missing? Did we receive any?
So there are people missing. Brenda, the only one that emailed me late was Andrea, though. No one else emailed.
Okay.
You weren't coming.
All right, so we'll just then do a resolution for absenteeism for Andrea Locorici.
Mm-hmm.
Can I get a motion for that?
I'll motion. Rhonda.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, I missed that. I'm trying to watch my phone and watch my camera here so I don't miss anybody. Sorry.
Sorry, I verbally motioned, Brenda. It's Rhonda.
Okay. Okay, do I have a seconder? Diane, thank you. Okay, and I need a motion to adjourn. Anyone going once? Anyone? Diane, thank you. Seconded. Tracy, thank you. Sorry, there's a bunch of hands up there. Okay, so I'm going to move to our closing prayer. If you all want to join me in the sign of our faith. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The prayer there is there in front of us. Blessed are you, O God of all creation. Each day you spread before us the rich and wonderful diversity of the human family, created in the divine splendor of your love. Fashioned in your image, you call us to love one another with the same tender care with which you brought us to creation. Each one of us is but one small part of the glory that is you. As we serve the students and families of the Halton Catholic District School Board on the Special Education Advisory Committee, fill us with your grace, guide us with your wisdom, and give us the strength and courage to do your work, so that it may always be said of our every act, God saw that it was good. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night, and we will talk soon.
Thanks, Brenda.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys.
Have a good night.
Thanks.